there's a big anti-war theme throughout the show. I don't even like to say anti-war. I like to say a pro-peace theme. But it's more of a demand for war to be over on the planet. So there is that social issue, I guess. But bigger than that, it's more about the awakening that's happening on the planet now.
This is Rob Ruckus.
Hey, this is Kate Clover.
Hey guys, it's Nick Collins here from The Effect and Better Strangers.
Hi, my name is Madeline Rose.
Hey, it's Ben McKelvey.
It's Tim Howard here from Mike and the Mechanics.
Hello, I'm Amanda Lehman.
I'm Billy Harvey.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Casey Sampson from the band Twist Stop.
Hey, it's Tony from Fastball.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Mitchell.
Hey, guys, it's Matt here from the White Lakes.
You're listening to Almost Famous Magazine.
Come join us for this interview. Check it out, Almost Famous Magazine.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to The Hang right here on Almost Famous Magazine. Thank you so much for those of you who have subscribed and shared our videos. We try to bring you the best in opportunity to learn and get to know everyone from musicians and comedians and actors, people who are creative and have great conversations, just hanging out with them and getting to know them. And today is no different. Today, you may have heard about this gentleman, or at least his show. Okay, his soon to be at some point next year, hopefully, if everything is the planets align. Undead Valley. You heard about that about 4 months ago because we happen to have a guest on who we talked about Undead Valley. But now we have the writer Justin Nicola of Undead Valley with us today, and I'm so excited to get to know him, talk about where you come up with the idea for, like, you know, a zombie musical, and how do you get there? What's the path? So without any further ado, Justin, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Scott.
It's great to have you. You know, you're in a different position than some people that I talk to on the Hang, because those are musicians per se. Your background, if I recall, I think you wanted to be a musician, but you went another direction, and now you're writing musicals. Tell us the story. How did that all happen?
Well, songwriting was always what I wanted to do, always. And the only reason is the rock star job wasn't available, because when I sing, I sound like a cat being murdered. So I always wanted to be a songwriter. I happened to be born in a weird time, so I grew up in a decade that wasn't really musically interesting to me, which was the 90s. And so I was really a fish out of water trying to make it as a songwriter in Nirvana's world, you know, because I was listening to Styx and Queen and Pink Floyd and wanted to do theatrical rock and roll songs. And they would laugh at me and be like, REO Speedwagon's not happening anymore, buddy. You know what I mean? And so I didn't make it. And so but when I went to LA, because I left college, I was at Berkeley, and I took a flight to Los Angeles with no money, and I basically became homeless in Los Angeles for an entire summer. It was a really weird time. I was on a park bench in Torrance once, and they were filming that TV show Beverly Hills 90210 from the 90s, and they woke me up off. That was my home, you know. And so I decided I wanted to become wealthy because of that, and so I became an entrepreneur and made millions of dollars and did that instead. But it was always a burning idea. I've always wanted to write a musical, partly because I'm not a singer, and that's a good way to get around it. You get a lot of songs out at once, but I've always wanted to ultimately just write songs.
Oh, cool. So where does the idea? Well, let's do this. Tell us about Undead Valley, and then I want to know more about it. So, like, from birth to where you are now, or from inception, I guess, to where you are now. Kind of what's the story of Undead Valley?
Well, the story of Undead Valley itself is the story, as you know, of a soldier during the zombie apocalypse who falls in love with an infected nurse, a zombie, or an undead girl, and which is highly illegal. He's the first military non-civilian to ever be wanted for this offense. And he pursues her through the desert, even though he knows he can get himself killed and maybe even his friends killed. So that's kind of the show storyline, but it's much deeper than that, and it's really all a big metaphor for what's happening in the world today. My story with Undead Valley, I wasn't going to do this unless I would do it ultimately huge. It had to be something that was so unbelievable on the planet, something that would so change things, something that was worth putting every minute of my time, every dollar of my money into it. It had to have that vision for me. So it wasn't just going to be like, I want to write a musical and I'm going to force one out and then I'm going to go down that path, because I could have made money so much easier doing something else. And so for me, the first, I knew I wanted to write a musical. I hadn't written songs in 10 years. I had a baby grand piano in my Beverly Hills apartment. Other than living there, I hadn't touched a piano for 25 years. I had written songs, in my 20s, and then that ended, and I just never made it as a songwriter. I kept trying, and then when I got to my 30s, I never touched music again. Right around the time that I got to a point where I lost all my wealth, right a couple months before then, I wrote my first song again, and it was a really beautiful song, and I think it's going to be in another musical called Animals or called Pigs that I'm working on. But I wrote that song, and then I wrote another pretty song, and I wrote the third song that I wrote that year happened to be in Undead Valley, but I didn't know about Undead Valley then. I didn't know that's what I was going to do. I was like, what should I do? When I was 18, I wanted to do the love stories out of the Bible book Genesis, like Rachel and Jacob, stuff like that. I liked the idea of love stories against disaster, West Side Story, Miss Saigon. I liked that type of musical because there's a lot of presence in it. I always say, because I don't really like musicals in general. So, Scott, one of the reasons I like certain types of musicals, and the reason I like them is because there's a presence. If somebody writes a love song, like one of the greatest love songs of all time is Yesterday by the Beatles, that song is about an experience that happened in the past. But when Kim sings Please in Miss Saigon, it's happening to her in the moment. And I love that about good musicals. So that idea was out there, and I wanted to write a show, but I wasn't going to force the show. And a lot of songs, I was becoming extremely prolific for someone who hadn't written songs in a long time, extremely prolific. And my mother, who is the most unbelievably hard person in the world to please musically, she's a pianist, studied at Juilliard. She just criticizes art in every single possible way. I would play her a couple of the songs, and it's just me singing, which sounds really bad. And my mom, who's not nice, was like, this is absolutely amazing. This is incredible. And so I was like, is it? Like, am I really, like, what's happening? And they would come to me in an interesting way, all the songs. So it started around summer of 2021 for me. And the first idea, because I wanted to do something super, super commercial and super artistic. The first idea, I was reading a book about zombies somehow. I was just in a place where I couldn't read anything. There was only choice was this book. I don't even remember the name of it. And I just had this vision for a second, which is now Scene 13. But the vision was just a bunch of undead dancing. You know what I mean? And singing. And there was a bunch of zombies. And I didn't do anything. I didn't follow the course or anything. And then I saw Army of the Dead on Netflix. And then I had like these massive visions of like a zombie show in the desert with the orchestra playing right behind, like literally playing right behind the actors and it was like really haunting, and it was really powerful. And I saw it on a big level. But it wasn't until I wrote the first song, and it was just that I knew there was no going back, which was Here for Gwen.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that it's really about overarching social issues, right?
Not social issues, overarching issues. Yeah.
Okay, overarching issues. What are some of the issues that you're addressing in a musical about zombies and about love?
Yeah.
Right? That kind of fed your interest in doing that, right? I mean, what are the underlying tones from a concept?
At first, I wasn't trying to do that. I was just writing my love story, which wouldn't be that interesting in the Back Bay of Boston. So I was like, I got to make these characters me somewhere else, right? And so the two males in the show, John and Dave, I always say John is me in my 20s and Dave is me in my 40s, And so that's what I started doing. I didn't want to certainly make any social or political statements. I was just trying to write my love story. And then what happened was, as I was creating it, I started to see that something else was working through me. The reason we're getting some of the most beautiful songs ever written just very easy. It wasn't like I was working at them too long. I was just started to play, and these beautiful melodies would just come out. the reason they were coming to me is there was something else working through me. There was an angelic force, a divinity that was pushing this along, and they had a message that was much bigger than a social message. But I will say some of them that would fall into the social. There's a big anti-war theme throughout the show. I don't even like to say anti-war. I like to say a pro-peace theme. But it's more of a demand for war to be over on the planet. So there is that social issue, I guess. But bigger than that, it's more about the awakening that's happening on the planet now. We're living in a very lucky time, Scott, that we all came to incarnate on this planet at this time for what's about to be a massive awakening, something that's never happened in the universe before, which is going to be happening as the Earth enters into the age of Aquarius. It's going to be a completely different way of living. And I kept getting guidance that this show was the alarm clock, or was the basically the beginning of that, or welcoming that to the planet. So the issues that are going over are more about consciousness than they are about social or political things.
Mm-hmm. Your process for bringing this all together is a little bit different or unorthodox compared to how most theatrical productions occur. Talk about how you kind of, I'm not saying put the cart before the horse, but to record all of your soundtrack already, to put that all together, and you've had some amazing clips out there on your socials. How did you decide on kind of flipping the script, so to say, on the process?
Well, I never really joined other people's games, because if you play other people's games, then they have their end game and it goes in a specific direction. This was being led from source for me, from divinity, and it had a very specific goal that didn't align with the goals of the system, right? And because I didn't align with the values or the ideas of the system, I wasn't going to be able to have the system welcome me and say, hey, you know what I mean? We'd love to do what you're doing, which is going to end everything we're doing. You know, it's like, think about if you were the first film with speaking, and there was a movie production company that made millions of dollars on silent films, but was just too lazy to get into films with talking. You know, they probably wouldn't want your film company to do very well. They wouldn't embrace you and say, hey, come on in. You know what I mean? And so I knew I had to go a different direction, because I was doing something completely different and I was creating a new product. A musical has never played in history at a stadium. You know, right now we are told there's a market for a pop star to play at a stadium. 70,000 people will go see a pop star that has a couple songs that are popular. Why wouldn't 70,000 people see the largest orchestra in the world playing incredible rock and roll and classical music, having a musical experience and telling a story? Well, they would. It's just no one's ever put any money toward that before.
What's it going to take to put on a production that large?
I know that, let's just compare it to, let's say, Broadway, for example, which between 15 and 25 million you could put on a show, you know, a light musical for the lower side, or a heavier musical for, you know, higher than that maybe. I think we're going to be at least $250 million to do what I need to do. And that's on a low end, I think. I mean, I've heard other people say they think 500 million, but I know it sounds crazy, but the way I live life and the way I manifest things, I don't really ask permission from the 3D world. I get permission from that, and then I move forward.
Now, getting back to kind of the record, because you've got the soundtrack recorded for the most part, as I understand it. I've seen the clips. Like, how did you go about? You know, you're there and you're like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this a little differently. It certainly probably wasn't a typical casting call. How did you find the cast and the right people to fit in these roles when you're again flipping the script?
Divinity showed up exactly how it needed to, in right when the next thing was needed. If I was told on day one, when I wrote Here for Gwen, if I was told the entire thing, I would have been like, fuck this is insane, and going to get a psychiatrist. But because I was given little pieces, I didn't think of myself as crazy. At first, I just wanted to write a musical. Then I wanted to write a bigger musical. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to add this. And stuff kept happening. Miracles kept happening along the way. Had I had no miracles and no good fortune, I probably would have packed it up, you know? But I've been led by just miracle after miracle after miracle. And the cast came in very miraculous ways. I started with, I have two unknowns that more than two, but I have two unknowns that I found, that I discovered that are going to be huge, huge stars. And that's Sophia and James. And after casting James, I had met Aaron Lazar at a seminar because Aaron's sick and he's healing himself, right? And it was just this really cool connection. We became like best buds right away. You know, I spent the next couple months, because I was taking time out of the studio just looking for cures for him and things like that. And we became friends, and he introduced me to a lot of Broadway people. And there was a little kind of schism at one point, because I think he wanted me to put all Broadway stars in the show and go that route. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to find the best people, you know, regardless of if they were famous or they were, you know, no one heard of them. And so I used, up until a certain point, I would take recommendations, and then there was this one part I just couldn't cast. I just couldn't get anybody to do it, and it wasn't working with Broadway stars, and they were, you know, older too. They weren't of the right age, and so I just kept, you know, just praying for it, you know. But the editors all showed up. Aaron actually recommended Tim. He says, I have a friend in, you know, London who's just absolutely amazing rock singer, because I needed a rock singer. And Tim was great. Me and Tim were like brothers immediately. It was just another friendship that was just like brotherhood instantly.
Let's talk a little bit about, you know, let's talk about the cast of characters in this show, right? The character name, who's playing them, and what they're bringing, what you find that they're bringing to the character to bring out the best in that character. Let's run through a few of these. So
James Goods is the star that sings the most minutes of music. I think it's like 40 something. He plays Sergeant John. He is an unbelievably talented musician. Just like, it's almost like sometimes when I'm talking to him about music, I feel like I'm asking ChatGPT a question about music, because it's just like, he's so studied and he's so smart and he's a great pianist and he has one of those beautiful voices in the world, you know, and so he's very, you know, and he's not in that world. So it was perfect. I was able to find my own kid for this, you know. I think he needs to grow a couple of years to get a little of that toughness and jadedness that, like, you know, that Chris had in Miss Saigon. You know, I need a little bit more of that out of him, but his voice is so perfect that it was also the voice I heard in my head when I wrote what is now Scene 25, the song Lost, between John and Gwen. When I wrote John's part for that, I actually heard that voice in my head a year before I met him, or 2 years before I met him. And so that was really an unbelievable find. You know, that was the first find for me, and I knew it was right. As soon as I saw his audition, I knew he was John.
Mm-hmm. How about some of the others?
Then a couple months later, I met Aaron, and I met Aaron at the seminar, and I didn't even know who Aaron Lazar was, because I wasn't a big like Broadway goer. Like, I liked certain shows. There was a handful of shows I loved, but other than that, I didn't go to, you know, musicals or anything. So I didn't even know he was a big, you know, Broadway star. It was just kind of funny. And the moderator of the event introduced me and said, "This is my friend Justin. He's writing a musical. And this is Aaron. I think he does something with musicals too. What do you do, Aaron?" He's like, "You're an actor or something." He just said that. And I was like, and then I got to know him and found out that he's this huge Broadway star. And Aaron plays Lieutenant Dave. And Lieutenant Dave is like the voice of reason. He's like John's friend, right? So John's friend and superior, but he's like the everyday regular guy who's just kind of, you know, been through it already, right? He's been through life already. This is the way things are. And so when he finds out that John's in love with a zombie, it's like he's going to talk sense into him. You know what I mean? And so that's the character that Aaron plays. Sophia Leisman plays Gwen, who's the infected nurse. Catherine Matrone, Katie plays Alicia, who I think you're going to do an interview with her in a couple weeks. She's amazing. She was a pop girl who got a Sony contract when she was a kid, and things didn't work out, life went a different way. And she's such a sweet and unbelievably kind person. And she brings so much love to the show and so much of her energy. And she loves the show so much. Alicia is a major sergeant in the military. She's John's best friend, and they had a little bit of a crush on each other in the beginning. And now she feels like she's in love with John, and she's kind of pursuing him while John's pursuing Gwen. And she's best friends with David too. So they're all they're like the trio. They're like the three of them are best friends in the show. And then Tim plays Captain Paul, who was a former military person who got bitten doing something for the government, helping out, helping soldiers. He got bitten and he became the enemy. He became undead, and he got together an army of other zombies and other zombies to go against the U.S. Army, basically. And at this time, the U.S. Army is called the NDA, which is the New Desert Army. Because in the zombie apocalypse, all foreign wars have stopped with other nations, and all nations have just focused on containment in the zombie issue. And so all the militaries of the world just focus on zombies. And so Captain Paul was a captain in the NDA, and now he's, a gruesome zombie, and he tries to, kidnap Gwen and keep her from John. Colonel Winters is Alicia's dad, and he's kind of like the Javert character of Les Mis, right? I don't have someone cast for the show yet. Norm Lewis sang it for the record, but I didn't, get him to agree to be in the show or anything. But he had said he would do it if Cameron McIntosh produced it, the producer of Phantom of the Opera. But I don't think I'm going to go that direction with a mainline Broadway producer. But yeah, so that the cat, I always refer to it like that because he has this transformation, but he's kind of this, order taking military guy who just wants to do his job, until he finds out that maybe he wasn't told the truth the whole time, and then he has that transformation moment. And then did I say I said John, Dave, Alicia, Captain Paul, Colonel Winters. I'm missing. What am I missing? My own show. Oh, General Oates. So General Oates is beyond evil. He's played by Doug Krieger, also a friend of Aaron's. And Doug is just unbelievable in this role. I mean, he's basically a psychopathic general that preys on Alicia and loves killing. And he's he's a non-redeemable character. And he just does such a good job. And it's a very, very high part. So it's like it's really, really amazing. And Doug is just such an amazing singer and is just an actor and just does such a good job with this role. And then I know I'm missing some, but I gave you 6, right?
Yeah. I think we covered the top line for sure.
Well, there's 7, and then there's a little girl who plays Luna, a little girl zombie. But there's 7. I can't even remember my own characters. Wait, John, Dave, Alicia, Paul, Colonel Winters, General Oates. I don't know what's happening. Oh, I didn't say Gwen. Did I say Gwen? John, Gwen, Alicia, Paul, Dave, Winters. Yeah, okay, yeah, Gwen. That's it. So there's 7, and then the little girl's 8. I'm like counting.
Well, I think the fact that you got a phantom to play a zombie is awesome.
He's amazing. He can do anything. That guy, he's just unbelievable.
Yeah, he's got the pipes and the energy for it. That's for sure. Tim Hauer is. You couldn't have found a better. He's a great actor too. He's very redeemable. He plays a redeemable character. He plays a bad guy who's really not a bad guy, and he does such a good job. Cool. What do you want people, when they finally see this, or maybe they listen to the soundtrack and understand the show, what do you want them to walk away with?
I want them to wake up out of the matrix. I mean, I wrote this for that reason. I wasn't trying to create something to go along with popcorn. You know what I mean? I was trying to create a movement on the planet, a consciousness, help. I don't want to say create it because it's not my movement, it's God's movement, but help the consciousness movement, you know what I mean? And help people awaken to who they really are and what's possible for humanity, what's possible for people, for sentient beings that incarnate into a body, what's possible instead of what we have, and I don't in any way suffer any illusions that the show is doing the awakening. I don't think that at all. I think God's doing the awakening. And I think she has been always planning that at this time, the age of Aquarius. And I feel that the show is just the alarm clock. It's like you wake up in bed, and then sometimes you wake up before the alarm clock goes off, and then sometimes you wake up after the alarm clock goes off because it helps you wake up. So some people are going to be already awake and go, aha, there it is. And then some people are going to be like, oh my God, this is who I am. What am I doing? You know what I mean? And so that's kind of how I see it. And so I know it sounds like a very lofty goal, but I don't think it's my goal. I really think it was something that was, put in me,
Mm-hmm. When do you think the soundtrack will be out so that people can start to listen?
Here's the thing. We are so obsessed with perfection and what we're doing. So we tuned this. They were the first commercial project to tune A below middle C to 444 hertz, which makes middle C 528 hertz frequency. I'm a believer that that's the pure vibration of love, the pure vibration where music should be played. There are whatever you want to call them, but some people say it's a conspiracy, but people think that music was tuned down by the Rockefellers as they were buying up drug companies and doing other things, that they turned down the volume of music, the hertz, the frequency of music to 440. And the reason they did that was to keep people kind of in discord and sick. A lot of the hysteria and everything from Elvis was because of, for the first time, music was now being heard at this, this frequency of 440. So we're the first commercial project to ever try this. And some people think 444 is a portal, that literally listening to music at this frequency can shift you into an alternate reality, a fifth dimension reality, a different experience. I know that our obsession with getting this right is so important that the record's done. I want to say that we hired the best musicians in the world that we could for just about every instrument. If we couldn't get the number one person, it was the number two or somebody in the top three. And they all played solo, which isn't normally how it's done. And now we're going back through and double checking the tuning to make sure that the pitch is exactly 444. If you were to go see a normal show or listen to a piece of music and the singer or the instrument player was out of tune by 3 to 6%, you'd never consciously notice, probably, unless you're like a super musician. You wouldn't probably consciously notice it, but you'd unconsciously know it, that something was off or whatever. And the better that pitch was, the more that music would vibe with you. And so we're making sure that 444 tuning of the orchestra is so precise and so perfect that it can do what it's serving to do, what it's meant to do.
All right. So I mean, when are you thinking could take a few more months? I mean, how long do you think people will get their hands on this?
It's always been about money too. It's not just about time. It's about how much money I can make in my other business and how quick I can make it. You know what I mean? I have a song that we just went to tune the other day, and I thought it was just going to be, it's going to take an hour or so. And, when you put another 10 hours into just tuning the orchestra and the different choral members. And so it's expensive, so, I have another few hundred hours of tuning and deep mixing to do. So I've been telling people February would be the goal, and put it on a website and maybe put it on Spotify, and allow it there, for people to listen to while we're putting the show together.
Okay. And what, I'm just kind of curious.
Sure.
Especially we talked a little bit about when you grew up. Were you channeling your inner Jim Steinman when you were writing this?
It's always, you mentioned Jim Steinman. I actually really liked his writing style. That's funny you say that. Meatloaf is great, huh? No, as maybe when I was 18, I wrote pretty melodies when I was young, but they were less mature. My lyrics were terrible when I was a teenager. But I wasn't writing there was no market for what I was doing. I mean, it would have, I could have written a song for Styx or REO Speedwagon or if I was living then, or Hall & Oates or something. I tended to write like that. But then I put it away. And when I put it away, I was no longer really interested in that anymore. And I didn't pull it out till 2021, when I started this. I've been at this now for just about 4 years. Fully.
And you mentioned you have some other projects in the works. What? How many balls are you juggling in the air? Or
Well,
do you have spinning?
it's like this. It's like they're puzzle pieces, right? Songs are like puzzle pieces for me because they go somewhere, right? You know what I mean? Is this going to be a pop song? Is this going to be in a show? And with Undead Valley, it was it was obvious to me that most of these puzzle pieces were in the Undead Valley puzzle. Once in a while, I would write a song and I knew it was a beautiful puzzle piece, but it didn't match the Undead Valley puzzle. I was like, no, And sometimes I didn't know. Like I had a beautiful song that I wasn't sure where it would be. It ended up in Undead Valley. Even Without You was one that I didn't have labeled as a puzzle piece. I had the puzzle piece over here, and I'm like, is that going to be in Troubles with Time Machine or Undead Valley? And it was the guy who did the graphics for the show who said, no, that has to be in Undead Valley. That's one of my favorite songs. And I was like, okay. And so I have more puzzle pieces, and those and they go in working projects that may never occur. Like I'm not motivated necessarily to do it like I was on Undead Valley because I'm not sure. Like I have a great storyline idea or a concept for a show called Troubles with Time Machine about time travel. I have another one that's kind of loosely based on Animal Farm called Pigs. And then recently I've been writing some really beautiful duets, and they're so gorgeous, but they're man-woman duets. They're not like, they can't just be duets that are just in a show. And there's no love story like that in Time Machine or in Pigs. And so for that reason, they couldn't be in that. So I started thinking about another love story against, disaster. And I was thinking of Gaza Girl, which is a Jewish boy and a Palestinian girl in the war fall in love, and so that's a possibility. And I just started recording a song yesterday, actually, that might either be in that or some other type of show like that. It has to be that Miss Saigon type. It has to be like, disaster, war, love, and, it's all coming apart type of thing. It's that type of duet. So, so I don't know it'd probably be Time Machine that I focus on next because it's burning in me, you know what I mean, to tell that story. But
so we talked, we hit on Jim Steinman there, and yeah, there's no doubt, there's no question about his excellence in being able to put together theatrical rock. But you're playing kind of in a genre that, not many right have played in, and there have been some rock bands like the Who did Tommy, who have gone there. Growing up and formulating your musical foundation, who are some of the musicians who are foundational to you with their influence, and why?
Well, outside of classical, because I really loved classical, and I was born to my mom playing, Bach's French suites and, Chopin every night before I went to bed. So that went into my 3-year-old brain. And then I went to boarding school, and they made us go to classical concerts all growing up, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. So I loved classical music, and a lot of the shows, like I remember when I was a young kid, I loved Oliver, and like, but for rock and roll influences, the Beatles are always, by far, first position. After the Beatles, I think the Eagles was probably my second favorite. I really liked Pink Floyd. I really liked Queen. Those were my 4 mega bands in school that I loved. And when I went to college, everybody, and don't get me wrong, I love the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but everybody just wanted to recreate the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And they would be like, oh, I'm going to do a band. It's going to be like a mix between the Red Hot Chili Peppers and jazz and ska and punk. And we're going to do this band. It's going to be Red Hot Chili Peppers meets this. And I was, okay, what's going on? There's more, right? But so I was another fish out of water in college when I would be like talking about bands like, in the 90s, like, Pink Floyd and Queen. And, probably now would be even better probably to have those tastes than it was then, because those were completely shut off then. Now that stuff's coming back, but then it was like, what's Pink Floyd? Like,
Well, it's interesting nowadays because I think musicians and artists have to work that little bit harder to find that point of differentiation between them and the other person who may be sitting at home making something and just throwing it on YouTube, right? I mean, there's the ease of content creation now is everywhere around the world. But how, when you create that content, whether it's music or art or poetry, writing, whatever, how do you find a way to not be vanilla, right? How do you find a way to cut through all of the other noise to rise to the top. And I think, I think in your situation now, and I could be wrong, the idea of mixing, love and zombies and peace all together in a musical, has that ability to cut through the noise.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and also it's all elements of music too. I mean, there's waltzes, there's rock and roll, heavy rock and roll. There's beautiful classical music. There's classical musical theater songs that could have been in The Sound of Music. I mean, so there's homages to different different musicals like that in the show. Where I'm, throwing back to that, right? And so there's so many different styles in the show. So that's another way to cut through the noise. Also to follow the artistic vision and know why. Being completely authentic and knowing why you're doing what you're doing allows that open channel to come in.
No, that's great. That's great. Well, I know I'm looking forward to hearing the whole soundtrack. As I told you all before, right now, the best way to see some of this stuff is to follow them on Instagram. That's kind of your primary social place. Hopefully there'll be some other outlets sooner than not, but you got to check this out. The music is amazing. I agree. You have put an amazing amount of effort to get it right and as close to perfection as you possibly can. So everybody, thanks for joining us today. But check out Undead Valley on Instagram. Hopefully there'll be, more coming out soon. Get the soundtrack out. Feel free, please. If you've got questions about Undead Valley, leave them in the comments below, and we'll get that to Justin. Check out their YouTube channel, and really be a participant in this, right? Your support as someone who appreciates this type of music and the idea around a zombie apocalypse musical are going to be the people who help propel it into the success that it has the potential to be. So please check them out. There'll be some links below. This is really something different, and I love difference. If you've watched us on the hang, the more different, the better, because sometimes the same old is just the same. And Justin, I appreciate you making time to join us today to really kind of dig into this. I've been fascinated by it since I learned about it. Anything that you want to leave everybody with before we start to wrap things up?
I know you said the Instagram it's Undead Valley Musical Instagram. It comes up when you write Undead Valley, though. Just that the intention behind this show is to bring love and peace to the world, and sometimes if we're wounded inside, sometimes people will resist the message. So it's been hard coming out into this planet because there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of resistance to somebody saying, "Hey, I'm gonna heal you. I'm gonna come and I'm gonna come. Who are you? What? No, you're not. And so I've been going through a lot of that. So yes, sharing this show and getting other people to realize what we're about is really important. And it's not, to me, it's not a career move for me. This is a mission. This is a mission for humanity. So.
I think that's great. I mean, when you have a mission like that, you put your passion behind everything you do. So I applaud you. And I think this is going to be absolutely amazing. Hey, everybody, thanks for hanging with us today. As always, we appreciate you coming and joining us for these. Subscribe, share these with your friends. Send us ideas. We're always looking to get with some of the most creative people we can find in music and art out there. So, Justin, it's been great getting to know you today. I really appreciate you hanging with us, and we'll catch you guys on the next hang. Be good till then. Bye-bye.